Hello. My name is Jules Velasquez, candidate number 0247 from Oak High School, Center US 218. The question I'll be answering today is, should governments do more to limit humans' impact on the environment? And the topic I'll be discussing is human health. According to the Oxford and Cambridge dictionaries, the Industrial Revolution was a period in which the development of machinery leads to major changes in agriculture, industry, transportation, and social conditions. It was characterized by the use of steam power, the growth of factories, and the mass production of manufactured goods. It took place around the year 1760 to about 1840. A key characteristic of this revolution was the introduction of fossil fuels, which marked the start of increased human interaction with the environment. Great quantities of these fossil fuels were used. As you can see from this graph, coal in particular was heavily used due to the increased building of railroads and steam engines. During this time, industry grew rapidly, beginning first in Britain and spreading to the United States and eventually nearby European countries such as Belgium and France. In response to increased mechanization, a group of gases known as the greenhouse gases were produced in great quantities. Carbon dioxide was produced in excess due to the heightened burning of coal, as was nitrous oxide. Methane was also produced during coal manufacturing in transit. The plentiful amount of coal use led to smog, which caused reduced function of lungs, harm to the heart, worsened respiratory diseases such as asthma and bronchitis, and even caused lung cancer. The pollutants created by factories mixed with air condensations killed, according to History.com, at least 4,000 people in London over the course of several days. The Industrial Revolution also led to inadequate sanitation. Cities were unprepared for rapid industrialization, and as a result, disease flourished. Cholera and typhoid outbreaks were numerous due to sewage running into the drinking water. Tuberculosis was also common and caused about 1 in every 4 deaths. The Green Revolution took place around the 1930s to about the 1960s. It is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as a large increase in crop production in developing countries achieved by the use of artificial fertilizers, pesticides, and high-yield crop varieties. From this graph, you can see that crop production began increasing around the year 1960 after Green Revolution techniques were implemented. Increased human interaction continued, and chemical fertilizers began replacing traditional fertilizers such as manure. These chemical fertilizers pose a risk as they can seep into groundwater or nearby water sources as runoff from the grass. This will contaminate the water, and it will no longer be usable. According to the University of Vermont, if water reaches over 10 parts per million nitrate nitrogen, which is created by the fertilizer, it can cause methemoglobinemia and inability to use oxygen in infants. Pesticides also became widely used. They are harmful because if present in large enough doses, it may affect the reproductive system, cause organ damage, or even cancer. Modern-day fracking began in the 1990s and is defined by Dictionary.com as a process in which fractures in rocks below the Earth's surface are opened and widened by injecting chemicals and liquids at high pressure. In the fracking process, many chemicals that are used are toxins. According to the Endocrine Disruption Exchange, 93% of the reported chemicals affect health and 43% are endocrine disruptors. Endocrine disruptors are defined by CatskillMountainKeeper.org as man-made chemicals that, when absorbed into the body, mimic or block hormones and disrupt the body's normal function. These chemicals have been known to cause adverse effects such as infertility, autism, diabetes, and thyroid disorders, to name a few. Exposure to these chemicals as an infant have been linked to childhood and adult cancers as well. In the graph shown, a drilling of oil and gas wells, or fracking, causes the greatest number of worker fatalities in the oil and gas industry. This proves how dangerous fracking is. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, the U.S. produced more than 236 million tons of garbage in 2003 and about 4.5 pounds of waste per person per day. This waste is transferred to landfills, which are dangerous and growing in size. The landfill is covered with plastic, then soil and grass. Though covered, it still produces large amounts of methane gas, which contributes to global warming. Leachate, a toxic liquid which comes from the trash, is produced as well. Studies show that people who live near landfills have a higher risk of certain cancers, and babies born to mothers who live near landfills have a greater chance of having birth defects. Being near hazardous waste sites can also cause exposure to arsenic, which in high levels can cause death. It is an example of a heavy metal which is defined by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, as metal compounds that negatively affect people's health. Many of these metals are necessary to support life, but in larger amounts they become toxic. Cadmium is a heavy metal that is common and found in the industrial workplace. It is extremely poisonous and has caused several deaths from critical exposure. Mercury is another heavy metal. A common source of mercury exposure is mining. If exposed to large amounts, a person could develop permanent nerve and kidney damage. Based on this evidence, I believe government should do more to limit our impact on the environment. One of my solutions is the replacement of fossil fuels with renewable energy. Fossil fuel reserves are predicted to run out before the next century, so this is a logical step. Renewable energy would also help reduce human impact on the environment, as there would be less carbon emissions. Without the burning of fossil fuels, the air would be cleaner, benefiting both our environment and us. I believe this solution would be the most effective, as fossil fuels are connected to all aspects of pollution-related health effects. However, more research is still required. There have not been studies of the long-term effects of renewables, so it is unknown whether they could have the potential to be harmful rather than helpful. Another solution is the stronger enforcement of federal environmental laws. The oil and gas industry is one example of these laws not being enforced. They are exempt from many environmental laws such as the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, to state a few. If laws were more strongly enforced with harsher consequences, there would be a higher chance of compliance. If the industries followed the laws, there would be less of an impact on human health. If neither of these solutions can be implemented, a last resort solution would be to develop a way to cope with the increasing number of environmental hazards. In places where the air is severely polluted, a device to filter it so that it is breathable could be invented. In areas where water is contaminated, more funding should be put into discovering a way to filter the pollutants from the water and make it drinkable again. This would not lessen our impact on the environment, however, but it would lessen negative health effects. Environmental activist Julia Butterfly Hill once said, "You have to hold yourself accountable for your actions, and that's how we're going to protect the earth." These solutions allow us to take responsibility, and by implementing them, protecting both the earth and ourselves is exactly what we'll be able to do. Thank you for your time, and these are my sources.